there was an excellent CE unit on the emerging infectious diseases, and it did bring out some new information, which I thought I'd share, make it more interesting to you.
Okay.
So, microorganisms such as parasites, bacteria, viruses, and fungi. And we've really been hearing a little bit more about fungi lately, but they live in and around and inside human and animal bodies, whether we like to think of it or not. And some are harmless, and some are helpful, and we certainly have to deal with them. Those that are harmful can be spread by insects, animals, and humans. Transmission can be environmental exposure, consumption of contaminated food or water. There are symptoms: fever, fatigue, sore throat, cough, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and sometimes coma and death. So they certainly do need to be taken seriously. Risk factors: well, if you have cancer and you've been radiation or chemotherapy, you have an immune system, depression, and we're hearing terrible things with the wars, and then there are many countries where there's severe malnutrition. So certainly that would mean that you could be infected much easier. And some people don't have the ability to receive vaccines. We do have a patient that's true, and I have the director work on my team, that she gets very allergic reactions to flu, and her doctor did not recommend that she get the COVID vaccine. They are the exceptions, not the rule. Pathogens don't move themselves. They need our help. And it can be through contact, sprays, inhalation. Now, this too is concerning. Normal speech. Normal speech is capable of generating invisible particles that carry a variety of contagious respiratory pathogens. So, we have been wearing our masks, and we will continue to do so. EID, new abbreviation that you'll see in the news: emerging infectious diseases. Some are brand new, some are re-emerging, and some are drug resistant. Most to date are animal origin and viral. WHO, the World Health Organization, that's been in the news, has warned that the EID is occurring at a rate never seen in previous history. Since 1970, at least 40 novel ID have been discovered. And then there's another whole area called the bioterrorism, pathogen that maybe would be intentionally introduced, which is really scary. Now, I'm not a history buff, but we have to understand this is not new, what we've been going through. So the Great Plague of Athens was 430 BCE. The Antonine Plague was 165 CE. Leprosy in medieval times, like around 1050, was a regular consequence of life. Contagious and devastating. The Black Death, 1350, most of us have heard about that. And they were saying that it was transmitted to humans through rats. But new evidence is indicating that the transmission was airborne through coughs and sneezes. The Columbian Exchange of 1492, the Europeans come to the new country, brought all different microbes that they weren't used to. The Fiji measles epidemic in 1875, because the people on that island had never had measles before. The Spanish flu, we've heard a lot about. My mother lived through that as a very young toddler. The Zika virus 1952, the Ebola virus, 1976, HIV and AIDS, 1981, the avian influenza and the H5N1 they talk about, 1997, the SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, 2003, then our coronavirus. The fact about the avian influenza, H5N1, was the first known transmission from poultry to humans. What other thing do we think about coming from poultry to humans? What is there something that we really think are over 100,000 infections every single year in the United States, probably more, and most of which
E. coli?
ends up, well, it's not E. coli, that's the animal feces. But when we think of specifically birds and chickens, we think of salmonella. So, you know, we tell you carefully to be preparing your omelets and your eggs, and salmonella can make people extremely sick. So, in 2,500 years, great advances in medicine. Some aspects remain the same. Vaccines and therapeutics are not always available in time. Failure to maintain adequate distance from people allows the microbial transmission. So masks and quarantines make sense. Contagion is often linked to poor sanitation, fecal-oral route. You'll see in all your restaurants, in the restrooms, please wash your hands, hepatitis. Stigma and misinformation are able to enhance the spread of disease. With vaccine hesitancy and anti-vaxxers, we have to remind ourselves that we're science-based. We want always to seek the evidence and the truth. The National Center for Emerging and Zoonotic Infectious Diseases has actually been a component of our CDC since 1917. So it is investigating waterborne and foodborne disease, hospital and institution-based infections. What would one that you would think about? I have a patient right now that really has residual problems because of a hospital-borne. What happens when some people are in sick and they're in the hospital, and what are they frequently given? IV. I was thinking of like MRSA. But in her case it was C. diff. She had to have such an extended period of antibiotic therapy, and it has really, really seriously weakened her. So, fatal diseases such as Ebola, anthrax, and COVID-19 was quite a fatal disease. Illnesses that tend to impact travelers. What do you think about, now, we should ask Lorraine Brooks, you know. I don't do the cruises and I'm not the big traveler. But I've had friends who have, and they were told specifically not to eat the fresh fruit salads. And my cousin was told specifically, when she visited one of the South American countries, don't eat the lettuce salad. You hear more of hepatitis A, B, and C with travelers. We think more of cholera, because we're used to turning on the spigot and actually washing our hands. We have that ability. And in many places of rural China or India, that isn't what happens. So, and disease does result from contact with animals. And if I watch Rick Steve on PBS and I see Afghan or other places where people live by their goat herds and by the pigs. And these are valuable to them. If the mountain lion takes them at night, they lose their livelihood. So they take their animals into their home, into the basement of their home, and then they're much more likely to pick up the transmission. Can be easier, and then we've been learning about how when people eat bush meat, to them it might be a delicacy or something different. But the fact of the matter is, it can also be contaminated with microbes. And diseases are spread by fleas, mosquitoes, and ticks. And our lovely Bonnie Marin, scheduler, she almost lost her son-in-law because he had the West Nile virus. And we hear about Lyme's disease, ticks, and it isn't something that some people think of right away. So when you see somebody young and healthy, as a young person coming in and complaining of a severe headache and malaise and a fever, you don't always think of West Nile virus, or Lyme's disease if there's not the bullet. So we're educators, and you can have an opportunity to tell and explain to people. I attempted to open a new case a couple weeks ago, 96-year-old little lady, and of course, laundry is part of our service, and it's for a reason. And she said she just didn't understand why sheets should be washed. She had a washing machine in the basement. She didn't have a dryer. And I said, well, do you have a clothesline outside? And she said, yes, but she said, I can't go out there and get it off the clothesline anymore. She was so unsteady. And I said, well, we could take it to a laundromat. Well, I'm clean. I wear pads at night. So, why do we launder sheets? Not just for people that are incontinent. Why do we launder our clothing? There is reason.
Yeah.
Tried to explain that to my husband. And he doesn't want to change his shirts in the middle of the week. Okay, we slough off everybody. Sloughs off their skin cells every 14 days. And something like skin cells, and it's called these little microbes, these little mites, these little dust mites that we don't see, these little invisible things. I don't know, I've been in my home 37 years, but this past fall, and now these teeny, weeny little ants. And I'm wiping everything, and and I said the other night to my husband, I said, well, a crumb is like a Christmas banquet to him. So it's like, I'm tired at the end of the night, like the one little crumb. So you get these fancy new ant traps, and they say that they eat it and then they go back to the colony and that kind of thing. But the fact of the matter is that these are absolutely in our environment, and we do our best. But there are reasons we launder. There are reasons we launder with hot water, even though they all say cold. Okay, so control and management. Better hygiene. Majority of pathogens enter the orifices, mouth, nose, eyes, ears, anus, and genital passage. Skin, through insect or animal bites. So we've seen that Osha DVD with Chuck Blau. It's excellent, and he, in detail, tells us how to wash our hands. Covering our coughs and sneezes, wearing masks. I'm still wearing masks in grocery stores. Don't see a whole lot of other people doing it, but I am. Okay? And all wounds washed and bandaged. We have a regular option client in Redeemer Village, and I went in for a routine visit, and I go through certain questions with everybody. Do you have any skin problems? She said, oh no. And any dental problems currently? Blah, blah. I get all through, and I'm going to call out, and I look down at her hand, and it's swollen and red, and she's got really nasty, and she said, oh, the cat bit me. and scratched me. And I said, oh, and I said, what are you using on it? And she just said, well, I'm using these alcohol pads. So I was able to find some Neosporin and some Band-Aids in her bathroom. And I cleansed it, and then I called her daughter. I didn't see signs of cellulitis, but that's a possibility. And we are the eyes and ears, and sometimes the nose when it comes to spoiled food. But if cats are around, we want to always be alert, because even friendly ones end up scratching, and I've had a history of that with other patients where the patient had lymphedema, did have cellulitis, did have to go to the hospital, was on IV antibiotics. So I went back the following day, and it was improved. So I redid the procedure of cleaning them and putting fresh Band-Aid or calling the daughter, and we have now made arrangements that the cat is going to be moved out of the apartment, because she said it was the second time it had bit her without provocation. Wow. She was just lying in bed, and I'm telling you, it was a really nasty bite and multiple sites.
Oh, wow.
And the one was quite deep. So, you know, birds also, we had one patient that had a parrot. So we aren't talking about a little canary. And the parrot really, and that's a puncture wound, because the aide was trying to help clean the cage. But we don't normally put those things on plans of care for a reason, you know, because what's OSHA about? It's about work safety. Kitchen safety, we always emphasize, because you are in the middle of preparing food for people. A lot of our people get Meals on Wheels, but not everybody.
No.
And sometimes it's our job to clean up anyway.
Yeah.
So I generally put refrigerator on that list, not meaning that you're wiping the refrigerator every single time you're there, but I certainly know, Pam, that in your case, when people are blind, you know, when they're unsteady, they spill things. So we do. And if they have Meals on Wheels, we want to pay attention to rotate the food, so that we don't end up with the tuna fish in there from 3 weeks ago. And public health, and that's been in the news. So what is public health? It's the science and art of preventing disease, prolonging life, and promoting health through organized efforts and informed choices of society. We are not just individuals. We are neighbors. We are part of church communities. We do have responsibility for those around us. OSHA is a federal government agency that makes rules to protect workers from hazards on the job. An injury, an illness, can be a hazard on the job. So not only do we not want our patients to get the salmonella or the E. coli, we don't want you to get it either. Standard precautions. Chuck has always said, now we don't do standard and universal, we just say standard. And that applies to body fluids, all of them. Sputum, feces, urine, blood, vaginal secretions. The only one he says is okay is sweat. Okay. Airborne, how can we not just survive, but thrive in a far from sterile world? I don't know about the people you share your life with, but my husband says I'm too fussy. I'd rather be a little fussy than very sick. So we have practical applications, because we're custodial, and our help means to be practical. So PPE, I have 2 sizes of aprons, so I want you to know that, and I want you to ask for it, because when you clean the bathroom, when you're preparing food, the apron's a good idea. We don't want you to take something home to your family, to your car. I preach the Swifter dusters and mops. People do not have laundry tubs. They do not have proper places for buckets in those old-fashioned wet mops. If you have a Swifter with the wet pad, you can do the kitchen, the bathroom, and throw it away. It's much more sanitary. Same thing with the Swifter dusters. We're not gonna take, and no names, we're not gonna take all 35 of our little China things all over the kitchen window, off and dusted. But if we've got a Swifter, we can kind of go around the pictures, because an awful lot of our patients do have pictures. And there is a reason to get into dust, because of the dust mites. A lot of our patients, and by the way, some of my lovely people on my team and Kim's team have asthma. So it should help everybody to keep the dust level down. One of my team members just said this past week that she had wiped the windowsill because it had been so dirty. The patient is in his 90s, very, very frail, and struggling for breath. So sometimes little details. We don't go around the house wiping windowsills, not the cleaning staff, but he's in that room 24/7, bedridden, in the hospital bed. So I thanked her. I donate those 3M scrubbers. I don't always find them at Walmart. Target does have some bigger ones.
I need one.
Okay, I have two, so you can get it now, because what I try to do is when I see them come in, I buy some. Yeah, I'm happy to donate it. We do not get down on our hands and knees like my grandmom and my mom, or forget it, I'm not gonna, I won't get up. So, and you go from home to home, so it's not appropriate. So that enables you to clean the shower chair and the tub. We want safe cleaning products, and this applies to laundry too. Growing up, I always smelled Clorox, and things were always hung out on the back, on the lines, yeah. As a working woman, I can't handle that, and the fact of the matter is Clorox is dangerous. It's going to take the color out of clothes, and it's going to burn a hole through them if you put too much in. And you really need to know that something is properly rinsed. You don't want something coming out smelling like Clorox. I do know there are times, maybe men's underwear or something like that, I'm not sexist, but maybe older men's underwear might need a little bit. But please be careful, because I had a recent situation where it was added to the laundry and the woman had lovely towels in there. And they really were, like, if something happens accidentally and it's not a Mercedes, I try to go to Walmart and replace it, okay? But I can't afford the fancy new vacuum cleaners. That's a little pushing it. I miss church a lot, but you know what? There is a limit. I'm not a doctor, lawyer, or Indian chief. So I always say, take another moment, and you're sometimes do not have enough time. Elizabeth, many of you are very excellent in the way you organize that time that you have, because it frequently isn't enough. To get laundry done, 2 hours really isn't enough. 2.5. You really need that extra time to make sure it's dry and comes out of the dryer, get it back into the apartment, into the home. But don't put towels in with a bright red
Sometimes
top.
you're not the one that packed the laundry bag either. Sometimes they're the one that packed the laundry bag.
Well, you're right, but I had a situation where someone added the towels.
Well, you have to
With a
sort.
red?
I think we
Sort.
might need to review that.
Okay.
Some people don't know how to
Okay.
sort.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Towels,
color, yeah,
leaves,
color.
lights
Okay,
and darks.
let's have some suggestions.
White
Yeah.
from.
White, you put white with white.
Okay, color
Yeah.
with color, white with white. What else?
Towels and towels only.
Towels, yeah.
See?
And bed
Excellent.
Hand wash bras.
Thank you. And do not put them in the dryer,
No.
like my husband did the one time.
That's how I
Please don't.
ruined some good ones.
So-
Didn't that?
No, but
Hey,
read the
didn't listen
label.
to my mom.
sometimes read the label.
Well, you know, I didn't listen to my mom, she said never
Oh, no, I
try your
read the
bras,
label.
and I did
Yeah.
anyway, and I lost some
No.
bras.
Really pricey now.
They are.
Yeah.
And just don't overload, not
Okay.
the washer and not
There-
the dryer.
There we go.
Don't the dryer,
overload.
overloaded dryer, it can cause a fire.
Yes, it
Yes, it
can.
can.
I have a lady that our sheet is is like, if you dry it, it's the sheet like stick. These kind of sheet, no, it don't wrinkle, it's like plastic, so you don't, I put it on no heat or low heat. So
Wow.
you have to literally read the label on the sheet when you
Thank
wash
you.
them. I
Wow.
did all of that. She was right, I was like, yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, the new kind of sheet, is kind of, yeah, you have to read the label blanket.
Oh, yeah, you gotta read the
Yeah.
labels.
Yep. They have this like microfiber, something, it looked like some oil is in it, yeah, it's very delicate. Yeah.
It'll get burnt in the dryer.
Yeah, if they were
I've
messed.
lost some stuff doing
Yeah.
that.
Okay. So please ask the client.
Right.
Ask her.
Yeah.
Does she want something hung up in the bathroom, a nightgown or the bra or the blouses? Because some things, I was a mother's helper when I was 16 and I put a lovely silk blouse in the washing machine. I already told, they already know, they've heard the story before. You know, but boy, I never forgot, because I ruined it. My mother didn't have silk blouses. And nowadays, you have some washable silk, cold water, things like that, but back then you didn't.
Yeah.
So I really felt terrible. So we all make mistakes sometimes, but the more we're careful and think about something ahead of time,
Yeah.
we're less likely that.
And if you wanna know if the clothes bleed, if they have a sink in the laundry room, run it underneath the water first, and then squeeze it out in my hand to see if it's run. Yeah, I do that.
Because more and more things they tell you to hand wash.
Yeah.
And I just say, I'm too old for this.
Dry cleaners.
Well, the dry cleaners are so expensive.
They have increased. They have.
You
No,
know,
I take a lot of stuff to the dry cleaners
Yeah.
and it has increased dramatically.
I do the wools because I
Right.
can't. So during the winter when it's cold,
Yeah.
I'll wear on the wool. Okay, so the other thing too, we want to check the cabinets. So that we make sure that if there's pasta or box things there, that there aren't also other little creatures living in it, you know? Because sometimes when you just don't make cream of wheat,
Yeah.
you know, regularly or something. So, I do appreciate,
And dates expired and
The little bugs in them one day, yeah.
okay, there was a really special article. This is current, this Scientific America, How COVID Changed the World. It is a special issue. And there are some really good articles in here. And one in particular, when we talk about OSHA, I know that Sam always wants us to emphasize tuberculosis. We may not be thinking about that because of all the lung condition with COVID. I mean, you know, we just had so many people that talk about ventilators. In all my 54 years of nursing, I have never had. And you're the authority on ventilators. So, you know, you knew about them and their use. But, you know, one would prefer not to be on one. So there's an excellent article. We tend to think that we're the only ones, you know, that we're so sophisticated and modern, and I found this article. This is Uganda, and the physician is Willie Sengoba from Kampala, Uganda. And I'm going to share a little bit of this article. It's very long, but it has some remarkable,
I don't wanna interrupt, this is
Yeah.
cut, I forgot, I'm not
Okay.
on Rich's account.
okay,
This is gonna cut off in 5 minutes, but I wanna make sure
Okay.
I get their full credit, cause it's not their fault.
yes,
Cause I forgot to sign on Rich's thing.
okay,
Do
well.
you guys have any questions on Zoom?
Okay, because unfortunately it's going to cut you off in like 5 minutes. I didn't log on to the VNA account, but you'll still get your full credit. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay, I'll sort of finish up this part of it so that it makes sense to you, and then if you have an interest in this rest of this other publication or article, it is current now, so that you can find it in stores. But I do want to do something that brings it close to home, and that is recent newspaper article, Are We There Yet? County health official describes conditions of the endemic. So we're talking about Montgomery County. The first COVID-19 cases were detected in Montgomery County on March 7th, 2020. 2 years later, that number has grown significantly with 120,266 cases and 1,617 deaths as of Friday. That's just Montgomery County. So as we're emerging from the Omicron surge, the natural question is COVID endemic now? Are we in the endemic phase? And the answer is we are transitioning toward endemic phase, but we're not quite there yet. They're talking about now another variation strain. So we don't want to let down our guard. It's just not the time. So I do want to remind everybody that when you start getting lower with your PPE, please call Bonnie and Sheila. They have to know what orders to place, and the orders sometimes now are being really delayed in delivery. And I know there's a much greater need for medium size of gloves. We only carry the nitrile powder free. But it's hard for Kim and I if we arrive and then you say, oh, do you have any gloves? You know, call us, call them, so that we can be prepared, so we can help you if you're not able to get in. If you're having trouble with your schedule because it's so full that you don't have time to come in, pop in, or stuff, we will make arrangements then to help. But we want you safe. That's the whole purpose of Osha, that everybody get through this. So, I don't know whether, Fran, you want to just feel that this is the completion of it, and then
Thank you, ladies.
I can share part of this article with those that want to stay.